Well, welcome VIPs, industry, and attendees. In keeping with this year's theme, Integrated Maritime Powers here, let's talk about connecting the grid, how low Earth orbit satellites are redesigning the network of the future. Over 10,000 satellites are currently circling the Earth at a rate of 80 to 120 minutes per rotation. These satellites bring faster internet, stronger communications, national security, and connect rural and remote communities of our world together. These were once far-fetched ideas of feasibility due to cost or the satellite size, weight, and power. Along with industry partners and government agencies, these satellites are redesigning how our military is able to use this rapid delivery of data to our warfighter around the globe and at a moment's notice. This is the network of the future. But first, I'd like to make some introductions, including our panel members from the Marine Corps, Space Development Agency, Navy, and industry. I'm your moderator, Rear Admiral Jim Butler, retired. I'm a graduate of the Naval Academy, the Naval Postgraduate School, and the Industrial College of the Armed Forces. I retired from the Navy in 2021 and retired as a civil servant in 2022, and currently a cyber innovation lead at Mantech International. Our Navy rep, Mr. Bill Flynn, is a graduate of Georgetown University with 40 years of experience as a naval operator and senior executive. Career highlights include multiple combat tours as an EA-6B mission commander, leadership in naval intelligence, including standing up the Farragut Technical Analysis Center, and for the past 10 years on the CNO staff in N2 and 6 as a division director and senior advisor for space. He has driven resources and requirements for critical targeting, advanced tactical data links, electronic and cyber warfare capabilities. At the end, Rear Admiral retired Matt Klunder is our industry rep. Matt is Vice President of Navy and Marine Corps Accounts and DARPA DoD Laboratories for L3 Harris Technologies. Prior to his current position, Admiral Klunder was Chief of Naval Research and Director of Innovation Technology and Test and Evaluation for the U.S. Navy and the Marine Corps. In the Navy, Klunder served as experimental test pilot, squadron commander, carrier air wing commander, and as the 83rd Commandant of Midshipmen at the U.S. Naval Academy. Mr. Klunder is a graduate of the Naval Academy, University of Tennessee, and the National War College. Significant career highlights include 88 Hawkeye of the Year, 91 Test Pilot of the Year, and the 2002 George C. Marshall Statesman Award. Matt has flown over 45 different aircraft and has 21 world flying records. Major General Jay Matos III is a graduate of Virginia Tech, the Naval Postgraduate School, and the Industrial College of the Armed Forces. Earning his commission through Officer Candidate School, he was assigned as a communications officer after the basic school. General Matos has held numerous operational command and staff positions. I personally met him at U.S. Space Command when it was standing up, where he was assigned as Deputy Director of Command Control, Communications, Computer Systems, and Information Technology. His most recent assignment was the Assistant Deputy Commandant for Information and Director for Information in C4. General Matos' current assignment is Commander, Marine Corps Forces Cyberspace Command, Marine Corps Forces Space Command, Marine Corps Information Command, the Service Cryptologic Component, and for U.S. Cybercom, the Joint Force Headquarters, Cyber Marine Corps. Dr. Derek Tournier is Director of the Space Development Agency, where he's tasked with delivering space-based capabilities to the Joint Force to support terrestrial missions through development, fielding, and operation of the proliferated warfighter space architecture. His experience in industry and at IARPA and DARPA, Dr. Tournier is well positioned to lead the SDA on its mission to provide future capabilities, redefining norms, and constructively disrupting along the way. Dr. Tournier is a Purdue Boilermaker with a PhD in physics from Stanford and has been recognized widely for his innovative approach to space acquisition and leadership at SDA. I'd like to offer our panel members time for a few remarks, 3 to 4 questions, and then open it up to the audience. And for those of you coming in here, instead of watching whatever's going on outside, we appreciate that. General.
All right, hey, thank you so much. Again, Jay Matos at Marfor Cyber, Marfor Space, and Marine Corps Information Command. Thank Sierra and Space for the opportunity to sit on the panel. It's the first time I've had the opportunity to sit on the stage. I've usually been sitting in the seats, so it's a different perspective sitting up here. I think as we go into this, the key for the Marine Corps going into when we talk P-LEO in space is three things. Number one, and two are closely related, is we talk about force design, we talk about the Marine Corps' mission. The Marine Corps' mission is America's 911 force, right? That's, if there's a challenge in the world, the president, combatant commanders turn to the Marine Corps to help solve that problem. Whether that's a Muse steaming off the coast of a country doing an HADR or a MAGTF of some size or shape going forward to conduct combat operations, that's our job. And we will never stop from being that force. We will always be America's 911 force. With that, I think many of y'all heard the force design effort that we're currently going through. Redesigning the Marine Corps the way it's shaped some of the capabilities, but really it's talking about modernization and bringing in new technology, innovative technologies such as P-LEO, and how do we incorporate that into what we do every day and how we fight. So those two things aren't in tension, right? We can do both at the same time. It's not an or. It's not, hey, we do 911 force crisis response for the nation, or we do the force modernization. In reality, we do both, and we do them both at the same time because it's necessary. We can't do the crisis response force without incorporating those new technologies, those new capabilities like P-LEO, like cloud, like the other innovative technologies that industry is making, and bringing them into the fight, incorporating into what we can do and to make so we can create that asymmetrical advantage against whichever adversary it may be. So the third piece I was talking about, so we talked about, again, force design and the crisis response piece are our two main focuses for the Marine Corps. You know, the third piece of that is as we talk about specifically about P-LEO, what I want to make sure we, again, it is just part of the overall architecture. It is, if you talk about the PACE plan, you know, the primary, alternate, contingency, emergency communications plan, a lot of people are focused on what P-LEO can bring, rightfully so, because it is a tremendous capability. And that should be your P in communications, but you also need a plan to have the alternate, the contingency, and the emergency communications capabilities on top of that in case, for whatever reason, the P-LEO is not available. So again, as we look at the Marine Corps' mission, 911 force design, innovation, and modernization, bringing those together and bringing them into a architecture that is resilient, redundant, and secure to support those operations, that's what we need to do.
Great. Dr. Turnier?
That was good. I like that. You know, those lights are really bright. Anybody have any sunglasses I could borrow? I don't know if anybody has it. It's bright. But no, thank you all for being here, and thanks to the Navy League for setting this up and hosting this. One of the reasons that I like to come to this audience and talk about what we're doing at the Space Development Agency is because it really puts the focus on why we exist as an agency. So Space Development Agency was stood up at a time when a lot of people recognized that space was a contested domain and that we needed to be able to bring the fight to and from space. But what they were losing sight of at that time was, you know, realistically, the fight that we need to worry about in the future is going to happen here on Earth, right? So the reason we need to make sure that we can have the space capabilities is so that we can deliver the capabilities that our airmen, sailors, and Marines and soldiers need in that time of conflict. And that's what we're all about. So if you look at our mission statement is speed, delivery, and agility. And what that means is we want to bring speed, delivery, and agility in the way that we provide two capabilities for our fighting forces. Number one, beyond line of sight targeting. So think about targets like ships and mobile missile launchers. Detect them, track them, calculate a fire control solution, and send that directly down to a shooter, and do all that from space as instantaneous as you can do it. That's mission number one. Mission number two, do that exact same mission, except now instead of ships, mobile missile launchers, do it for advanced missiles in flight. Hypersonic glide vehicles, all of the new threats of missiles that we hear about. Detect them, track them, send them down to a shooter directly so that we can take out and intercept those targets. That's it. That's what we're focused on. Everything we do ties into those two capabilities. And the way we do it is by doing it in a spiral development approach. That means that We're not going to deliver those capabilities tomorrow. We're not going to deliver those ultimate capabilities in just a few years. But what we will do is we'll deliver a portion of that capability every 2 years. By hook or by crook, we're going to launch spirals, we call them tranches, to give those capabilities to the warfighter. Now, that means that we'll ultimately keep pushing that goal and keep getting to exactly what we want to deliver, and that is that all of that beyond line of sight targeting in real time. But the beauty of it is that doesn't mean it's going to be all or nothing. That means you're going to get some capabilities in 2 years, in 4 years, in 6 years, continuing to push that. That's very profound over the way systems have been done in the past, and that's what we're all about, is bringing that to bear. And we're doing that through proliferation. Hundreds and hundreds of satellites, all in low Earth orbit, to be able to bring that in a very timely, affordable, and resilient manner. So that's what we're all about. So we're teamed very closely with the Navy and the Marines. Marines 911 Force, I love that. I'm going to steal that, I love it. 911 Force, you call 911, what are you calling them on? You're calling them on the SDA transport layer. That's how you contact the Marines and tell them what's going on. How do the Marines know where the problem is and where the threats are? They get that from data that's being passed over the transport layer. You need to pass missile flight data and pass that around. That's our tracking layer that does that sensing, sends it down to the transport layer. Goes down already to Link 16 communication that everyone has already fielded, not only the US forces, but all of our allies. That's what we're going to use for the fight. That's where we're going to get this data. That's how we're going to make sure that the 911 force gets the data it needs and can win. So, pass that on.
Okay, yeah, when you start thinking about proliferated LEO, it was very theoretical until really the last couple of years. And I had 3 C stories real quick. First, midshipman first class calls home from the southern or northern Atlantic, and then can send some happy shots, a couple megabytes worth of pictures from the USS Ford. Unheard of capability a couple years ago, but it was an automatic thing that even the midshipman could get access to bandwidth afloat. The second was a chief's mess actually purchased a Starlink system and was using that in some different interesting capacities. So that challenge is like, wow, that really tells you how fast things are moving. And finally, my wife was a realtor, was literally having long-term phone calls with her client who was in the southern Atlantic. And that's just fundamentally different capability than we've ever had before. And so to bring that home, now how do we as a service start to take advantage of that? Really, there are 3 things. And Derek already touched on the speed at which they operate. Now, as the acquisition side, representing how we develop their requirements and resources, that means we have to move at a completely different speed than we ever did before. We can't sit around and for 10 years hammer out the requirements for a large, exquisite satellite. Derek and his team have already moved fast past that. And so we have to make sure we really monitor that partnership and drive the requirements as they're looking to see what's going to go on the next tranche, make sure we're in tight synchronization with what that capability could look like and then what we're going to drive and test that to. So it's really a very different environment than we've ever lived before. And we have to do things like create something called a stay antenna. How do we very quickly develop that ground beat? Because he's going to put the satellites up, but we've got to drive for the receive and transmit capability, and how do we integrate that into our data networks afloat? Those same data networks are trying to fight all those same challenges in terms of the speed in an adverse environment. You know, if you have a geostationary satellite, you understand that that satellite lives its life in view of the potential adversary. And so is that something you can rely on when things get hot? And that's where the value of proliferated really jump out. And you see that in how do we have to understand what our unique military requirements are. The commercial bandwidth is tremendous, but then there's a unique subset of military capabilities that both our special operators or other forces have a unique and it's not going to be something that industry is going to probably develop without a very clear guidance and a demand signal sent from a service. And that's really important about that. The diversity is also a huge deal. That diversity in terms of resiliency becomes really important, and your ability to bring that down and spread that thing. And you watch how the basically Starlink system was being fought in Ukraine and what lessons that teaches. And that really teaches about the speed of the adversary and the ability to roll over and change things very quickly. That goes then to start to what are the operational imperatives and the operational advantages that this can give us, that wide bandwidth. Now you start to live in a world where I can really push large updates, weapon system capabilities. I can push and change those in ways that I haven't done before. I can have highly redundant pathways that use a blend of both DoD bandwidth and maybe some pure commercial, because maybe pure commercial is where you want to be. You want to go in, I want to disappear my data paths into that mass global architecture. And that's the PLEO gives us a way to do that. So there's a really very different way we're having to think about things, challenging ourselves all the time, and again, working at the speed to take advantage of the tremendous capacities that these satellites offer us.
Well, I think I'll jump in from the industry perspective, and truly, I first want to say thank you, Jim, and the panel. I think we had a great discussion here, a great topic, and it really is timely, and I hope we can kind of stimulate some questions that you may want to come back to us. But let me just think about this topic itself, LEO networks connecting the grid, and I'll give you an industry perspective to support my colleagues. Number one, I think Derek Tournier is spot on with the way he's doing his tranche spiral development. I, from L3Harris, fully support it. And what I mean by that is, let me give you something to chew on. We're still going to have times when we need to do exquisite, very, very capable systems in buses that ride up into space layers. But remember, that's a long, long time path. And if as an industry player, you didn't properly stimulate the requirements correctly, you didn't supply chain it correctly, you may be stuck with that bad solution for 10 years. Derek's plan with his tranches, which again, we support, it's about every 2 to 3 years. And oh, by the way, we're on a lot of them. And what I'm getting at is, let's say you did the first tranche 0. Maybe you learned something. Okay, I don't need to repeat that mistake on tranche 1 and then tranche 2. So I think in terms of an industry perspective, we do like this model. And even if you didn't bet properly on the first tranche, I've learned enough lessons to fix it for the next tranche. So kudos to you, Derek, and your team on SDA and the spiral development. I know that was selfish, but I wanted to do it for my panel member. Here's one thing that I do want you to consider, because this is hard. Industry perspective again. And remember, I was in uniform for over 33 years, so I'm giving you both flavors here, I hope. LEO network, fantastic. It's going to work. Great persistent global coverage. Everything Derek and the team and Bill and the generals talked about. But remember, we have other layers in the space tier as well. And I think I don't need to give everybody a one-on-one on that. What I'm challenging this folks, and myself included when I look in the mirror, I need to be able to say, totally with you, Derek, on the LEO network, but I also need to make sure we're connecting the other layers to give a consolidated multi-domain, multi-space layer architectural approach. That was a lot of words, but think about it. I won't ask you to raise your hands. I'm an aviator. How many people have seen an aircraft stay online for 30 plus years and they said, nope, it's sundown and tomorrow and we're gonna sundown it, and then you find that it's gone for another 5 or 6 or 7 or even 10 years. My point is, we need to be able to still, with all the brilliance that we're doing in the LEO network, be able to still maintain the bridging to these other space layers. It's critical. Not easy, but it's something I think in industry we can support you with. Now, one other thought to consider again, as I like the way, again, the SDA is moving forward, I think this is humbly from industry. As we spiral, though, I'd prefer industry, probably, I'm speaking for the whole industry force, that we're not doing a 100% full reverse on, we did 0, tranche 1 is 180 out. What I'm getting at is, if we can continue to iterate, improve, learn lessons, but keep non-recurring costs to as limited as you can, as little as you can, then we are getting the cost advantages and the speed. But if you're 180 flipping it, that gets harder. I'm just giving you the honest, industry perspective. And one other thing I think all of us can resonate, and my CEO likes to pride himself on it as well. In this day and age, and if we are indeed going to get in front of our adversaries in this space layer and all the multiple architectures we're going to work, you got to be a disruptor. If you're just sitting back and resting easy, going, I don't want to use speed limits because I don't speed, but pick a number that you're comfortable with. You're just riding, doing a Sunday stroll, the bad guys and girls are going to beat you. They're going to get in front of you. So if we don't disrupt the current way we do acquisition, and we're seeing it with SDA, we're going to lose. So I'm fully supportive of that. I think we are disrupting that kind of architectural space solution set. And from industry, if you got any questions for me, I'm certainly happy to address them. Thank you, Jim.
Right. A great opening remarks. Thank you very much. I'd like to start with a strategic question and progress against the service's strategies. For the Navy, the CNO's updated navigation plan highlighted space investments as part of the plan for distributed maritime operations. From a Navy perspective, how has the emergence of proliferated LEO communications, DoD or commercial provisioning, played into the Navy strategy, and has it affected the Navy's investments?
Yes.
Yes.
No, yeah, it's right in. I think, what I was talking about earlier, those are exactly the investment decisions that we have made to take advantage of it, because we see it as a tremendous asset in both speed, bandwidth, and resiliency. It really, that mesh network that you can tie into is really, really important. And then figuring out the ways and diversity in both waveforms that we use and everything. And so it is absolutely, directly aligned with providing that. It's the key to overmatch. So when you see that discussion, that's all part of those capabilities. And so diversifying the networks that support the transport is exactly the approach. It's what SDA is trying to do. And as well as we mix it with our legacy systems, which are there, but then be able to have the diversity of paths is so critical to the resilient capability.
Perfect. And for the Marines, paraphrasing, the Commandant's Force Design Focus 2030, updated in 23, highlights pursuit of capabilities required for Navy concepts such as DMO, EABO, and LOCE. We all know what those mean. How has the Marine Corps been able to take advantage of these new commercial and defense communications architectures to create asymmetrical advantage?
Yeah, good question. Thank you so much for that. Again, as I spoke at the outset about where the Marine Corps is going in order to shape and equip our force to go out there. Again, we continue to look at all the pieces of the satellite architecture that supports. It's not just PLEO, because as Matt said down at the end, there is so much more to the space layer than just PLEO. And again, as we build out the space architecture that we utilize in all our operations, it's going to require us to use all aspects, whether it's LEO, MEO, or GEO, to provide those communications capabilities. Because at the end of the day, like I said, secure, resilient, redundant communications that we need to provide our commanders and our Marines, no matter where they may be. And again, we continue to utilize these capabilities. We test them out. Our Marines are incredibly industrious and ingenious with the capabilities they have. We put that PLEO in their hands, a Starlink terminal in their hands, and you think it would do a certain set of equipment, or a certain set of capabilities, but you will be amazed with the ingenuity of Marines, what they will come up with and how they will utilize that capability on top of others to really layer in that capability to get after the various DMO, Loki, EABO, Expeditionary Advanced Space Operations. Utilize all the tools at their availability. So again, this is really, at the end of the day, providing that secure, resilient, redundant communications link that we need to execute our operations, utilizing all the resources and innovation that industry can bring.
Great, thank you. For the Air Force, the Department of the Air Force 23 Comprehensive Strategy for Space Force includes, paraphrasing, resilient space operations, global C3 ISR, and space capabilities to satisfy joint force requirements. SDA is, as you mentioned, is rapidly launching tranches of military SATCOM vehicles and sensors on roughly 2-year centers. How is SDA progressing against a fully resilient MIL-SATCOM LEO architecture beyond what you've told us so far? And when will you meet the entire joint force needs for a future crisis or conflict?
So buried in that resilient LEO, so I'll touch on that for a second. So I'll paraphrase, because I butchered the quote, but I'll paraphrase. I have two bosses, Secretary Calvelli and then General Saltzman, the Chief of Space Operations. And Secretary Calvelli has said that we are now so dependent, the Joint Force is so dependent on space operations that we need to make sure that we have a fundamental shift in how we build in resiliency. And that fundamental shift is based on two things. Number one is proliferation, and you're going to do that in LEO, talk a lot about proliferation. And number two is diversity of orbits, as we mentioned. So when we talk about resiliency, I will talk about how the diversity of orbits fit in with proliferation. So now to the point of the question about when and how we will do this, what will be fielded when. Let's give an overarching picture. And so the overarching view of the Space Development Agency is we have a few tools in our toolbox that we pull out. And unlike Admiral Clunder, I have been known to speed because I usually am in a hurry. So the first one is our tool of speed. So that's our first weapon of choice. Get everything out there as quickly as possible and then fix it and run forward. And the second one is proliferation. So to give you an idea of that, both on speed and proliferation. So right now, we have 27 satellites flying. So those were launched roughly 30 months from order to orbit. So those are up there just doing demonstrations so that we can experiment with them. Our plan is to do a lot of demonstrations with Pac Fleet and then participate in Valiant Shield and to let people understand what it's like to use these proliferated constellations in an actual exercise. So that's one, that's tranche 0. We call that our warfighter immersion tranche. Not enough to affect a fight, but enough to train with and get comfortable with utilizing those data. Second one, tranche 1, we start to launch that this year and we complete launching and it becomes operational by the end of next calendar year. So this is roughly 160 satellites total. So we have additional Link 16 capability to cover the entire globe, 126 satellites to cover the entire globe. And we have 28 of our tracking satellites to be able to do the missile warning and missile tracking mission. And then we have 4 of the missile defense missions or the fire control systems. So all of those will be flown in addition to about a dozen other experiments and demos. But those first tranche 1 satellites, that will be operational. That's when we'll be actually to really affect a fight and provide this capability of beyond line of sight targeting and the missile tracking to the warfighter and be able to make that operational. So that's when that comes in. Now, another thing we've talked about, so the diversity of orbits, so how does that fit in and how do we actually make that real? So I talked about earlier that we were going to provide our initial capabilities all over Link 16. That was chosen deliberately. It was chosen because that's a radio that's already fielded. It's already in the aircraft, it's already in the ships, it's already in the soldiers' hands, again, with our allies, not only our joint force. So that's the initial way that we expect to get the data into the hands of the warfighter. However, we have 2 other ways to get those data down to the ground and into the hands of the warfighter. First up is military KA. All of our transport layer satellites have military KA to be able to come down. Why is that important? That's important because the whole vision is this hybrid SATCOM terminal that we want people to go to. This is what Sting is a perfect example of. Sting is a version of a hybrid SATCOM terminal concept. What does that mean? That means that I can build one terminal that I can switch either automatically or manually to start with, and have apertures that can go either to the LEO layer, and when I say the LEO layer, I mean the SDA transport layer over military KA, or go to the commercial layers over KU. So you can go from Starlink to military KA SDA transport layer by either just flipping a switch. Later, we want to make that autonomous, but right now you just flip a switch. But you can also flip that switch to go to the birds at MEO and GEO that are also transmitting on KA and KU. So that's the whole vision, that if you have this hybrid SATCOM terminal that will get fielded throughout the fleet, throughout the field, that will allow you to get to touch into this diversity of orbits as well as diversity of the P-LEO providers, not just the SDA transport layer, not just Starlink, but all of them combined. So that ties in the third weapon that we bring, and that is this spiral development approach, right? So we do this every 2 years precisely so that we can take the requirements that are coming from the fleet, fold those in to make the changes on the spacecraft, because it's a lot easier for us to change a couple hundred spacecraft while they're being built than to change 100,000 radios that are already fielded. So that's the goal, and so that's the time frame of when we want to bring these things to bear and how we're doing it.
Outstanding, thank you. So Matt, from an industry perspective, from a strategy, many industrial players are pursuing a business strategy of as a service, including military SATCOM as a service, ground station as a service, communications as a service, and of course, geo-based SATCOM as a service has been around for decades, and launch services are largely self-sustaining today. So from an industry perspective, how do you see this business strategy playing out for a LEO-based MIL-SATCOM beyond the SDA architecture, and is it sustainable?
I'd like to tell you it's a definitive yes, but I'm not going to say that, and I'm being sincere, fully transparent in that there has been cases before on the as a service business model that have not been successful, and I won't list some companies' names, but they're buddies of mine and partners and colleagues. But I think there's a way to get there though, Jim, and that's what I really want to get to, that open up for discussions if you want later, is that, okay, so service. Is the service now going to have a lot of on-orbit high-speed processing? Probably in Derek's and my thought process, yes. But I'm also going to tell you sometimes there's some really heavy bandwidth requirements and some driven that you're going to have enough ground entry point control stations to support that. I'm getting to the service, trust me. I'm building the house here. Because you can't just go, yep, I'm putting that big juicy service cloud up in the sky and everybody's just going to have access to it. Well, how is that being fed? It's probably being fed through either some of SDA orbits with the on-orbit processing that I've alluded to, or you're coming it down from either some operations center, fusion center on the ground that then uploading or downloading, et cetera. I want everybody to understand that is not trivial stuff. And the other piece that I think is important, I'm fully on board with Derek's last comment about the different waveforms that we're trying to drive towards. But I'm also going to tell you in honesty, there's always another one around the corner. So let's not be naive. You know, as you get more of those, and back to, I know how to do it. I could do it today. I could build you some kind of 3U kind of subsystem system that can probably take about 5 or 6, even 7 of those and process them in high speed and it'll work. But it gets bigger, right? So part of the question is, well, what's it riding on? Is it riding on a cube? Is it riding on one of Derek's buses? Is it riding on something with a bigger bus that's got a bigger swap? See, I'm just trying to make sure we don't just walk out the door today and go, yep, that's going to work. We got to really tease through some of those issues, in my opinion, from an industry perspective, and who's going to support that. So why I'm coming back to is, yes, I think there are business models that can work at Jim and my colleagues, but I think you need to be fully informed and understand that you're going to have a supporting ground entry point network to support it. You're going to have the fusion centers either there or up there, that someone you've contracted to build that into the buses with the processing, which is achievable, by the way. And then you're going to find someone that either wants to be a partner with them and then works the software piece and the cloud piece. Then it starts to come together. But I hope you just didn't take away from, yeah, just stamp it and it's going to work right tomorrow. And I'm being sincere, because I've seen some really good companies that are pretty sharp tried to do that about 5 or 6 years ago, and it just wasn't ready yet. I hope that wasn't a negative. I was trying to give you positive and ways to think through it. So,
No, great answer, and a little realism in investment as a service
yeah,
model.
I think so.
I want to hit an operational question, and you've covered much of this already. But earlier in the day, all the service chiefs continue to highlight readiness as one of their priorities. So operationally, what else would it take for the services to be ready for a peer-on fight in late 2020s, early 2030 timeframe? What else do you need beyond what you're doing already today? Maybe starting with you, Dr. Turner.
So let's make no mistake about it, right? The Space Force is ready for the fight tonight. What we're worried about, right, is that we don't have the ability to certainly have as strong as deterrence as we would like, right? Deterrence is not 100% assured. The more we proliferate, the more capability we bring to bear, the more the adversary knows that the fight is definitely stacked way against them, that the stronger deterrence gets. So that's what we're advocating for, building out and making sure of that. The other part, and this is something, this message cannot be stated loudly enough, and that is resilience is key, right? We are not nearly as resilient as we would like to be, and that's what a lot of these investments and plans are all about, is getting us that resilience to make sure that we're there so that we can overwhelm any adversary. Hopefully we would not need to, but then we would be ready to. So everything you see in our plans are built around that. So the time frames I'm talking about, next year, the end of next year, we'll be able to bring that, what we call regional persistence. So that means the satellites, right, confuses people because they're low Earth orbit. You've got hundreds of them. You can't have them hover over a certain period of the globe. but in fact, we have to duty cycle the power on the satellite. So in essence, we do hover the service over different regions of the globe. So by the end of next calendar year, we'll have that service to where we can present it over different AORs. Then that's tranche 1. Tranche 2, then 2 years later, so now we're in 2027, we'll be able to have that full global persistence. So now we can provide that service everywhere on the globe, and you don't have to make trade-offs between areas. Then tranche 3, you essentially get that whole global with resilience, because now you have enough satellites up there, and you have diversity between all of the orbits, to where now not only you have that full global persistence, but you have it in a very resilient manner. So that's kind of what we have planned.
Outstanding. For the Marine Corps, take advantage of this architecture and others, what else do you need that you haven't talked about already?
Yeah, again, great response, Derek. I mean, again, if you have that, your team has that same drive tonight, that hopefully you can beat Connecticut in the finals. That same drive and initiative, you went right
Go
there.
Boilers!
I think one of the challenges we have is, again, we don't have space assets, or we don't own our own space assets in the Marine Corps. We are users of what SDA, industry, and others provide. So when we talk about being ready for that fight against a peer adversary, that's why we need to be able to train. I spoke earlier of the PACE plan, right? Primary, alternate, contingency, emergency communication systems. I can't rely on that space layer being there, whether it's the PLEO or otherwise, because our adversary is good and they understand what space comes to us. But I'm really at the mercy of the capability of the systems that Derek is going to bring, or industry. And again, you talk about the resilience. I think that is key for all of us. But again, that's what you are providing us, and that's what we will use. If that's not there, then we have to look at what other means of communication are out there. You go talk about single channel radio, you talk about troposphere. Again, those are systems that we can control more so at the Marine Corps level. But really, we are at the mercy of again, industry and SDA to really provide us that resiliency and redundancy at the space layer, so that we can utilize it when and where we need it.
Great, thank you. Bill, for the Navy.
Yeah, I think the key, the General already touched on, is getting this out to the fleet and the operational users in time so they can get comfortable with it. Because it's committing exquisite capability, but if it takes a PhD to man the rack or whatever, because it's still so experimental, the factors aren't all driven in, we haven't done our full job. And so that's to make sure that not only is the capabilities deployed, the training packages with it, and then the more we get into it, and I think the more we get the capability in the hands of the sailors, they'll figure out ways to use it and use it very effectively. But we got to get it out of the lab and the acquisition process and get it forward, get it deployed so that you guys can get their hands on it.
Perfect. And after this, we're going to take some questions. But for industry, we talked earlier, the service chiefs talked earlier about industrial-based challenges that in some cases the service is created based on the budget challenges that we've had. So what does industry need to help the DoD posture for success to get there based on what you've heard?
I'll make this really easy, and I've got one of my colleagues here to support industry's position, and I'm not speaking for all of industry. I'll present what has worked for us. If we can get continual contractual vehicles moving quickly, 2 to 3 years, then we can plan, we can lead the investments in, we can lead up the supply chain that needs to turn those. And I think that's really a very positive development. Thank you again. I will tell you, as we get to larger, exquisite ones, sometimes that exquisite requirements, while hugely important, take longer. And it's, again, harder for us in industry to judge the costs and the supply chain mechanisms. So that's the first part. But I would tell you this from an industry perspective, kind of to support the General's comments and Derek's and Bill's comments, is that we're in a Navy, this is Navy League. This is Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, Merchant Marine. I can tell you flat out from an industry perspective, we build space assets, sensors, buses at all the layers to support multiple customers. And I can assure you that we know how to get them into a maritime mission set. So I want the General to feel confident he walks out here. I want Admiral Thomas to walk out here confidently knowing that, yes, we may not have the big buckets of money for, I'm speaking now pejorative, us, the team, for the Navy and Marine Corps, but we do have the ability to make them into naval marinized space missions. Derek knows that, he's a submariner at heart, and so I just want to give you the industry perspective that I'm not worried at all about that that perspective. We'll get you the stuff on the kind of timelines you're working, Derek, but I also tell you, we know how to build those sensors and systems to give them a lot of maritime missionality.
Great answer, thank you. Hey, now we'd like to take some questions from the audience. Now, the reality is conversations on military-related space can get classified kind of quickly. So if the answer looks like it's going to go classified, I'll probably divert the question or thank you. There's a microphone in the center of the room, and please tell us where you're from, what company or what agency, what service, and direct it towards the preferred panel member.
I'm Mike Rupart, Naval Research Lab. I wanted to ask, probably for Dr. Fournier, but involvement of our TPCP or NATO partners, what are short-term plans for involving them in this new connectivity that we're trying to enable ourselves with? Thank you.
No, thanks for that. So, and a shout out to NRL. For those of you that may not be aware, NRL is providing our ground for our Tranche 0. So the operations of those 27 satellites, NRL is working with our space vehicle vendors, but essentially flying those satellites as part of Tranche 0. So appreciate NRL doing that for us. So as far as how we involve our NATO allies, so I don't want to get too far ahead of some different announcements, but we have been working very closely with NATO allies, and we are going to actually put some ground entry points for Tranche 1 in some NATO allies on their territory itself. In addition to that, we've also been having some difficulties. This is not just SDA, this is DoD-wide, especially the Navy's affected by the ability to do Link 16 testing over the national airspace. So I won't belabor that too much more, but we have been doing all of our Link 16 testing to date over a Five Eyes Partners territory, and we're going to start shortly doing that testing over a NATO ally partner who's willing to work with us to do that. They're excited to be able to get the capability in their hands. So we're pushing hard to make sure that we get the capabilities there. We're teamed very tightly to make sure that we have agreements in place to use their locations for ground entry points, as well as doing Link 16, so they can start training and are ready to use Link 16 operations once it becomes a go.
Great. Other questions for our panel members?
Good afternoon, Al Daniels, Department of the Navy. This is more for Dr. Chernier. We've seen over the last couple of years the vulnerability of submarine cables in the ability to deliver information to warfighters. In the event of the fight, how do you see the vulnerability of the seabed cables affecting the military's ability to access the satellite assets that it needs?
So I'm not going to comment on specific threats, right? But I'll talk in general. Everything that we're looking at is looking to be resilient over a broad class of threats. One of the first things that we took as an operating parameter for the Space Development Agency's ground is we needed to be backhoe resilient, right? Accidents happen as well as adversary action, and you want to be able to make sure that you can operate the constellation no matter what. And that's one that's one threat vector that we look at. All of the folks within the Space Force and all of our partners are looking at a broad class of threats and adjusting accordingly, right? So the ability to have multiple layers to move data across in space via the transport layer, via commercial layers, all of that is resilience added to any kind of submarine cable difficulties.
Hey, Derek, can I add just one quick one? Because I think it might be helpful. In days past, years ago, getting a launch opportunity, a launch window, it was challenging, and the number of vendors that could produce that. Now there's a lot more launch capability. There's a launch of opportunity, and we from industry, when we design and build and develop systems for Derek and others, we can strap those on any ESPA ring, any kind of launch of opportunity, right? So now all of a sudden, if there's some degradation, maybe, we can regenerate quickly for him and others. So I thought that's a dynamic, we obviously got to talk carefully in this room, and we are, but those are things that I think are another little dynamic, Derek, that helps.
Great answers. Other questions?
Hopefully you can hear me. Probably not. There we go. I'm Dr. Hodge with Navy, former NASA, and so I was wondering about Tranche 2, the optical layer. I think that's optical or optical communications. I was wondering what benefit that is for the military.
No, thank you. That's great. So I talked a lot about Link 16. I talked a lot about KA. But the third way that we get data down is optical communication. So for those of you that aren't aware, we have optical terminals that are on all of our satellites. That's how we do the inter-satellite links, and that's how we form this mesh network. But one of the key aspects of the transport layer, and one of the reasons that SDA chose the optical standard that we did, was so that it could go through the atmosphere and go down to very small optical terminals so that we could place those on ground terminals as well as airborne platforms. So that is certainly the future of how we want to get those data down. That capability will exist starting on Tranche 1. It exists on our Tranche 0 satellites in the demonstration capability now, and we're experimenting with that. But on Tranche 1, it'll be operational. It's just there won't be a lot of the terminals on the user side fielded. We do have optical ground terminals that we're going to use for some of our mission control and mission data that we'll use for our satellites. And we're teamed with the Navy and others about how to put those terminals onto actual platforms, the Navy and the Air Force in particular, so that we can have this optical communication layer. Because that gives you high bandwidth, it gives you low probability of intercept and detection just from physics without any fancy waveforms, just because the beam is narrower. And it comes with a lot of advantages. Now, it does have some disadvantages, right? It doesn't work well in clouds, and it doesn't work on vehicles that would need high banking maneuvers and things like that. But for a lot of platforms, it's an ideal solution.
Great question.
Good afternoon, Captain Brett O'Donovan, CEO of Nick Tam's Land down in Norfolk. Sir, I've heard a lot of references to optical and KA, but in the maritime, dealing with rain and weather and physics is important. I haven't heard any reference to X-band. I was wondering if there's any look to continue using X-band. And the second part of my question is the actual scheduling of military SATCOM resources has been eating our lunch for years. Is there a look to possibly better dynamic plan, especially to be able to meet the pace of operations in the near future and in the Indo-Pacific?
Those are all excellent points. So the SWAC, Space Warfighter Analysis Center, has a space data network force design that they're putting together, and how they would be able to support the joint force with various different missions. And so X-band is being considered as part of that. I'll say that right now it looks like everyone is focused generally on KA and then commercial KU, as well as S-band and then L-band for the Link 16. S-band and L-band will give you that penetration for any kind of weather events. So that's kind of what we're looking at. I do realize and recognize how dependent and how often the Navy uses X-band, and that's something that we're looking at different force designs. This is SWAC within the Space Force, looking at the big picture on how that will be represented going forward. As far as how the network is managed and how you do that, a couple different ways. So the Link 16 way is the easiest for us, and it's actually the easiest for the combatant commands to get their hands around, because essentially they won't need to change any of their TTPs for how they operate. Our satellites with Link 16 will just be given time slots from the combatant commander JITCO, and they'll be scheduled to enter and exit the Link 16 networks that are managed by each of the COCOMs as if they were any other Link 16 node on an airborne or a shipborne platform. So then that management, that's how that management will be taken care of. When you start to talk about the KA, when you're talking about the hybrid SATCOM terminals and how all of that works, it's a little different. So the idea would be we are going to try to be able to field a system that does space data network that provides enough capability that scheduling is kind of a thing of the past. You always have the capability, you always point it on, right? The saying is, where do you want to find a LEO satellite that's, that you can connect to? If you point up, eventually if there's enough satellites, you'll always connect to one. The scheduling, and this is one of the things that Sting and others are working on, is more than a function of which satellite network is available at that given time. Not is there availability, but which one do I need to turn my Sting platform on to be able to communicate with, whether it's O3B, whether it's Kuiper, whether it's Starlink, or whether it's a transport layer. And then that's something we're working out, how you communicate that common operating picture so that everyone knows at the terminal level how they can set that so that they can connect. That's the level of thinking we're at right now.
Can I jump on one real quick? Because I don't want this to be the Derek Tournier show, obviously. That was a joke. It wasn't very good, but it was a joke.
Good try.
Think of this aviator walking up to the flight deck, getting ready to jump in my jet or whatever aircraft you're flying today. I'd like to be able to Derek's point, say, we know we preloaded 4 different space architectures that maybe we were going to use, but we just decided as we walked up, someone gave, this is the one that looks really good right now. And to Derek's, comment about I go switch A, B, C, please, it's not quite that easy, but we are working towards that. Remember I was talking about the swap kind of aspects? We know how to do it. We really do know how to do it, and the apertures that would support it. But I want you to recognize that's kind of a goal and objective we're driving to, that we could make it where maybe I pre-briefed that one in the ready room, but I'm walking up to the flight deck and I go, nope, we need to switch to this architecture now. Because remember, this is supporting everything we do in the Navy and Marine Corps, right? It's not just one slow-moving ship. All sorts of things are going to be using this network, connecting the grid. So I want everybody to appreciate that's what we're driving to, and if from an industry perspective, I know we can do it, but if you have any challenges you want to talk about, ready to go.
Great answer.
And also from the, again, Space Command has the Global SATCOM Coordination Mission, right? So again, working, great discussion of the technical aspects of some of the stuff going through, but again, I think that's reaching out to the J36 at Space Command, work with your global combatant, your regional combatant commander, work that piece through. But I think all that ties into the technical side, but also Space Command's role, that UCP mission for the global SATCOM management. So,
Great. Next question.
Yeah, my name's Dave Waddell, prior Navy. This is for Mr. Flynn and McClunder. Bill, you brought up the issues of multi-terminal capability, both in terms of frequency and in terms of waveforms. We've seen this in the past in the joint community with that famous JTRS initiative, to use a polite word. So how do you see that going in the future in terms of providing a joint capability, multi-frequency, multi-waveform? How do you determine which waveforms are there, and how do you get it out to the fleet in a rapid manner, cost effectively?
Well, yeah, it is a tough one. It's good to see, and that's a knowing question, but it is, as Mr. Klunder provided earlier, that it's something that we're working on. That's the design objective. That's what the requirement is written to. You do the multi-band, multi-capability, and that's kind of where we are. But the technical level, I think that a lot of this stuff that was really hard a couple of years ago is with the convergence now, it gets easier and easier. That these are relatively small swaps or open swaps to do, and literally at the antenna end also, that was kind of something. The first couple Stings that worked really well were clipped on with magnets and handled some pretty heavy sea states. And so it's like, these are game changers. Yeah. Very different the way they operate. But yeah, we're still working through some of the full challenges. Trying to drive, coherent and common government standards. So it's not we don't want to tie into proprietary. I know that's another thing that SDA's worked very hard to make sure they have multiple vendors in almost every place to drive to common formats and waveforms. That's it.
Here. Tough program. Another question.
Hi, Taylor Schwenke, previous Air Force and Space Force veteran. Yes, it has been around long enough to be in the Space Force. I have a question mainly about narratives. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what space as a missionary actually is and how it supports the joint force. And especially looking at a crowd mostly Navy, how can we get better as a community about cross-talking about our different domain interests and how we support the joint fight?
Derek?
I think the general wants that one, right?
Is your question really more about the joint space mission, especially since it's now focused more on the Space Force, at least the space segment and ground segment is?
My question is more about, we've spent a lot of time on MILSATCOM, but there's so many other mission areas like missile warning, like space domain awareness that contribute to joint efforts and contribute to our ability to help other surfaces. I mean, those haven't really been touched on today. So I'd be just curious on kind of this panel's perspectives on some of those other key areas that are definitely talked about in space circles.
Sure. So there's probably two key. Space domain awareness is one that ranges from unclassified to classified, and avoidance of each other in space. And then on the sensor side, you've talked some of it, but there's a lot of commercial sensor availability as well, without going into the other side. From a SDA and avoidance perspective, Derek, maybe you want to touch about that, and maybe Bill, thoughts on your use of open source space or the other services.
Yeah, and I want to, so I think the crux of your question is, are all we doing is providing comm and tactical comm, and is that really the end of, that's kind of what we're focused on in this discussion, but clearly the Space Force has a lot of different mission areas, right? And missile tracking, missile defense, talked about that one as well, but the ability to make sure that we can protect and defend our assets and negate adversaries' assets is a mission of the Space Force as well. And I don't want to give those missions short shrift just because we're focused on the comm and the tactical networks here. But certainly that's, just looking at it from SDA, those two main capabilities. I'm focused on the terrestrial fight, but there's a lot of other aspects that are important in making sure that we understand and can defend ourselves in space as well. It's just not the area that Space Development Agency is developing.
Yeah, and it points out a really critical dynamic that's different. The creation of really the Space Force as a service who's got two core missions. One is to fight and win, and the other is to support the joint fight. And so now we have, as the first time, the services that are collectively relying on another service to generate a lot of our warfighting capability or key links in that. And so it really goes across all the areas. And just recently in the building, there was a big discussion at the very senior level looking at the space architecture. And they talked about all 5 of those missions. So I think this was focused a little bit less on the network and how we connected that and its key role in warfighting. And it actually touches all those missions as well. For either counter C4ISR or missile defense, you still got to be able to move the data and the understanding from the shooter to the enactor to the decision makers all at the same time at the speed. And they all have to be working off the same data sets to get to the same mission. So it is the most joint of the missions I think that we all have, working with Space Command and the Space Force and then SDA as partners to do this. But it's really been a very different dynamic because it's not one we really had before. So,
Can I just, the principles of what we're talking about today, not just the network, global coverage and persistence, things we didn't have years ago.
Yeah.
You can't hide. And from a naval person, I want to be able to cover every part of the ocean, and from an industry kind of supporting that. So I think you're going to see a lot more development in the space tier for a lot of those missions.
Yeah, great.
Alt P&T is another big one that you get a lot of advantages from proliferation, and so looking at those as well.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Well, I think we're out of time. I want to thank the Navy League for this LEO-based space panel at here Sea, Air, Space. And most importantly, I want to thank our panel members. There's a lot of prep time that goes into some of these questions, and so let's give them a round of applause. Thank you.